Hello, happy Wednesday. So, today, what I want to do is I want to break down how one of my clients literally got a director offer in less than 3 months. So, he's actually starting his new role next week on Tuesday. So, this client, I believe he started working with me, I would say February 27th, maybe beginning of March. And he only applied to 9 roles. He submitted his application to only 9 opportunities. And after those 9 opportunities, he got the interview. It moved very fast. And then he got the offer. So, the reason I want to break this down is because I get a lot of consultations with people who share with me how it's impossible to get interviews. They have not been getting a lot of opportunities that are at their level. And they're skeptical about how they are going to land a role that they love. And so I'm using this example, one, to give you hope, two, to share with you the strategy so that you don't waste your time on the wrong things. Okay, so let me go back and describe to you the challenges that this client went through. So when he came to me, he took a break from the whole technology world and he held a VP level role. He held roles at Fortune 500 organizations. And then when he came to Canada, he was having trouble finding opportunities that he loves. And so he went into academia and was teaching at a college. And he spent, I think, probably 5 years there, around something like that. I don't have his LinkedIn profile in front of me, but I'm just going by memory. And what happened was there was a layoff, there was a basically cost reduction. And so he found himself at a crossroad where he wasn't sure what to do next. And having been in academia for a while, it made it difficult for him to go back to what he was doing in technology as a leader in product. So he found me, ironically, through one of my LinkedIn lives. I was sharing a story of a client who was an entrepreneur and that I've helped land at Amazon while he was still in Mexico. So he came to me, we had a conversation, and he took a leap of faith and decided to work with me. Now, I want to share something important here because sometimes when people come to me, they kind of want this, let's say, reduction in uncertainty. Like they want me to remove all the risk. They want a guarantee that they're going to be successful. And I never provide that guarantee because that's just extremely unethical for me. And it always confuses me when people come to me wanting a guarantee because when you go to a university and you get an MBA and you spend what, $100,000 on an MBA, do they give you a guarantee that you're going to pass? No, they don't. Okay? You have to basically, the onus is on you to understand what you're being taught in an MBA program and apply it correctly, right? So I can't go to interviews on your behalf. All I can do is I can coach you and train you just like the best soccer coach out there, transfer all the knowledge to you and critique you when you practice. But I can't go to those interviews and control your nerves and, speak on your behalf. That's not a service that I provide in case that is a mistake. So it's the same thing, right? The coach is not going to play the game for you. The coach is going to teach you how to play the game in the most effective way, but they're not going to play the game on your behalf. So I have to give this client a lot of credit, because when you're unemployed and you don't know how long it's going to take for you to have that runway to sustain, sometimes you have to make that decision and ask yourself if it's riskier to do nothing and have your situation get worse, or to get help, and it's not going to get any worse than where you're at, right? Because obviously, if you're doing the same thing, I mean, that's the definition of insanity. Hi, Saba. It's really nice to see you. So anyway, this client joined and he decided to take a leap of faith. And I want to share the behaviors that made him successful. Now, some people, when they join, they come in with a lot of fear. And one, they want to bulldoze over the frameworks and the program because they want to speed up their results. They skip over the foundation and they'll try to apply for jobs and build a resume fast. And I actually remember him and I had this conversation where he found this shiny, role that he was excited about, and he had just joined my program. And he basically said, "Can we pull this resume quickly?" And I said to him, "You can, but it's going to take time. And you can go through these videos and steps, or we can do this the right way, given that what you were doing before wasn't getting you traction. Spend time understanding the right role for you, spend time, going through all of your initiatives that you worked on as a leader at every single company, and go deep and give me a chance to ask you deep questions so that we can build the right brand." It's really up to you. The wonderful thing about him is he wanted to do this right. And even though he had that urgency because he was unemployed to get a job fast, he decided to completely disrupt the pattern and do this correctly. And he said to me, "No, I want to do this the right way. This is why I signed up to work with you." So the first thing we did was I got him to do my career archetype assessment. Now, a lot of coaching programs, what they do is they give you a whole bunch of templates. First of all, they ask you to decide what role you want. And then based on what you tell them, then they give you all of these resume templates that you fill out and help you build your resume. And most of the time, they use AI to do that. And then they give you these outreach strategies because, to be quite frank, they're not strong copywriters. And so they'll give you the crutch, they'll give you the tactical stuff. But the way I like doing it is, first of all, the reason people feel demotivated applying for roles is because we are at a point where we feel jaded, where we don't feel that the grass is greener. And honestly, sometimes you just want that sounding board. Sometimes you want that person who helps you make a decision on what role is right for you. Yes, you can talk to family and you can talk to friends and you can have coffee chats and you can have these long conversations with ChatGPT and Claude and ask them, "Based on my experience, what role do you think would be the right fit for me?" Except the reason ChatGPT and Claude is not always able to guide you in terms of the right role for you is because the root cause of the unclarity comes from you. And when you don't understand yourself very well, or when you share things about your role, but not the entirety of what you've done, I mean, a lot of us tend to minimize what we've done. And when we explain what we do to someone, they don't fully grasp it. And so it's kind of like going to a doctor, and because you haven't given them a clear description of the symptoms and the illness that you're going through, the doctor's diagnosis is not going to be accurate. And that's why when you give your friends this information or ChatGPT this information, they may not give you the clear diagnosis. And this is assuming that your friends have a good understanding of the market, that your friends have an understanding of all of the roles out there, which isn't the case. But even if they did, just like ChatGPT, I mean, ChatGPT is aware of of most of the roles in the market, is still not able to accurately tell you what is the right role for you. Because ChatGPT, what it does, it gives you the insight based on what you provide it, right? And the thing is, what you provide, an LLM, absolutely right, Robert. You can't expect a large language model to give you good output when you give it bad input. Exactly. And this is why when you go to a doctor, it's different than when you talk to ChatGPT. I mean, I shared my story from, I will say, a couple of weeks ago, where I uploaded images of my foot and pictures of my foot, MRI, X-ray, everything. And I asked ChatGPT, what do you think is going on with my foot? And ChatGPT kept telling me that it's a stress fracture. And in the end, it turned out that I actually had 2 centimeter ganglion cysts in my foot, which is a completely different thing than what is actually going on, what ChatGPT told me, right? So it is honestly the same thing. And people go into these rabbit holes of what roles they should apply to based on ChatGPT's recommendation. And then they get frustrated when they're not getting traction. Because the reality is, there is what you think that role looks like on paper, and you thinking that you might enjoy it when you've never done it before. And then there's the reality of, is it feasible based on your experience? And this is where I come in, because I will tell you all that I've developed proprietary systems based on working with over 1,000 people that help me validate if a certain career direction makes sense for someone. And there are questions that I ask that not a lot of people ask, to determine what would actually bring you joy and make you happy. And actually what was going on with this client that I helped land a director level role, he was positioning himself as someone who was in partnership and customer success. But after a lot of digging, it turns out that he wants to be a product leader, that he wants to actually do product work. But he wasn't openly sharing that. There was a little bit of fear, there was a little bit of imposter syndrome. And the thing is, you guys, ChatGPT is not very intuitive. It doesn't challenge you, it doesn't pick up on your fears and emotions. And so your internal bias can sway ChatGPT a certain direction, and all it does is it validates your own fears and your perceived limitations. But I don't take what my clients give me face value. I challenge them. I use my intuition to say, you know what? I actually think that you would enjoy product more. So that's what happened. Him and I made a decision based on what he's great at doing, based on his strengths, based on what brings him joy, based on his past experiences. And we got focused on a direction. And the reason I'm spending so much time talking about this is because a lot of you, the reason you lose your motivation is because you're not excited about your direction. Listen, when you are a leader, you will move mountains if you are excited about an opportunity. If someone came to you and said, I'm going to wave a magic wand and you'll get everything you wish to have, you will get the 200,000 to 300,000 role, it is going to be hybrid. You're not going to have to be on the road for 2 hours to get to your, location. Then I bet that you will move mountains to make that happen. I bet that you will. You're not going to dread, networking. You're not going to dread applying. But because you are not excited about your direction, you don't know if it's possible, you don't know what's going to bring you joy. This is why the job search feels like you are doing your taxes. So, yeah, when my client got that clarity in terms of what his role is, he got extremely excited and committed to the process. He said to me that his confidence came back because he finally felt understood. He finally felt like he figured out his calling and he had a goal that he was excited about. And so, what we ended up doing after that was we rebranded him. Now, here's the other thing about brands, okay? People confuse the tactical, watered down approach of building a resume with building a brand. Completely different concept. The thing about brand, okay, is building a brand, okay, is building your reputation. It is controlling how people perceive you on the outside. Look, some of you are going to say, "No, I know how to sell myself or market myself. No, the job search is broken. No, recruiters, they don't understand me. No, it doesn't work to apply for jobs." I mean, I'm telling you guys, go back to my LinkedIn lives. There are so many stories of clients that I've helped who applied cold. They didn't know anyone, there was no referral, and they still got the interview and they got the offer. So many examples. I have worked with 1,000 people at this point, and it doesn't matter what year, what was going on, AI, no AI, pandemic, no pandemic, and the strategy always worked. See, the thing is, when you don't know how to do something effectively, then of course you're going to blame the approach and say, no, it doesn't work when you do that. What if you said, maybe I'm not branding myself effectively? Maybe the way that I show up on LinkedIn, or maybe the way I had the conversation with the recruiter may not have been the best way. Is it possible? Okay, so let me explain what I mean by branding. Let us say that you are a product senior manager. Okay. And you want to move up to director level. You know that you've been doing the work, but for some reason, when you talk to recruiters inside your organization, they keep telling you that they don't see you as someone at that level. Or they may not be telling you in your face, because not all recruiters are direct. They might say to you, well, we went with someone else. You have great experience, but we went with someone else, right? The reason that happens is because you are not being perceived at that level. It's very simple. Now, why? Many reasons. One of them being you are so used to marketing yourself at the level that you're at that you just don't know how to market yourself where you want to be. Okay? And it's not your fault that this is going on. It is not your fault because the company that you're in put you in this box and taught you to talk about yourself as someone in that box. They made you tie your identity to that senior manager level even though you've been operating at the director level. So you can operate at the director level and beyond, but you can still talk about yourself as a senior manager and tie your identity as a senior manager. And when you have your boss making you feel like you're not ready to move up, you start believing it and you start speaking that way. And that's the reason you don't move up. No one really taught you, they don't teach you this at school, how to market yourself. You can be good at what you do, but you can be a terrible marketer. This is why, not everyone is in marketing, right? I mean, marketing is a separate function than product because product leaders are not necessarily good at marketing the product. And even worse, when it comes to talking about yourself, you may be great at advocating for other people as a leader, but when it comes to advocating for yourself, it's very difficult because when you're inside the jar, it's very difficult to read the label on the outside. So the thing about this director that I've helped is he actually didn't have the director title in his last role, which made things even more challenging. It created this bias for recruiters to feel that he didn't belong in this category. I'm getting some questions here. Let's see. Oh, hey, Larry. It's nice to see you. Hello from Chicago. Yeah, it's crazy weather in the East Coast. This is why I'm wearing my blazer. I normally don't wear my blazer inside, but I'm so cold. I honestly have become this person who believes most people do not give an ish about anything I'm saying or doing. Well, you know, um, you need to, I don't know what your question is here. I think it's just a comment. But what I'll say is that fit is important. And sometimes we get discouraged based on one person's comment towards us or one person's behavior. And I encourage you to not let that interfere with your own self-belief and desire to improve yourself. Anyway, I am going to get to that. Let me finish first the whole brand hurdle that my client and I had to overcome. So I mentioned to you guys that he took a break. He was in academia, so that was a detour that created even more bias when it comes to his positioning. And then he kept telling himself the story that him being in academia is a step backwards. And then the second thing that was going on is yes, he didn't have the director title in his most recent experience. And then because he was in academia and wasn't in product for a while and he wanted to go back to product, it was very difficult for him to remember what he's done. So what happened was, one, I have an incredible story architect GPT. So I want to show this to you all because this is revolutionary. I built this GPT. It has years and years of my IP. And no, I am not going to share it with you guys for free because you know what? I'm going to be honest with you guys. The thing is, I practice what I preach. And I always tell my clients to never undervalue themselves and never let recruiters or hiring managers lowball them. And I would do the same. I'm not going to give away blood, sweat, and tears of my IP for free to everyone. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. It took me years to actually build this. And it wouldn't be fair to my paying clients who invested in themselves by joining my program to just like spread it like that for free. It wouldn't be fair. So, this is something that I only share inside my program. And I'll show you guys how it looks like. It's actually very cool. So, with my story architect GPT, what it does is when you put in a job posting, let's say director of product, I'm going to put in jobs here. And I'm going to copy and paste this. And when you click on start by analyzing my job posting, what it does is it takes the job posting and it extracts 8 to 10 core themes. So I'm going to say go ahead. The biggest mistake that people make when it comes to applying for roles or even branding themselves against a role is that they don't address all of the components of the job posting and the role. Sometimes what happens is people, as part of their brand, will portray just the technical aspect. They don't portray the transformation aspect. And as a leader, you're brought in to create a change. They may not, address the cross functionality that you're able to work cross functionally across the organization and align people. So you might think that you've addressed all of these things, but you haven't. And so I have a very structured process to ensure that you are checking all of the boxes when it comes to building your brand for a specific role. And this is what the GPT does. Step number one, understand the role very well instead of quickly trying to pull together a resume and a LinkedIn profile without having that deep understanding and going to interviews and winging it. You know what my biggest pet peeve when people talk to me about interviews is they tell me, "Oh, just put me in front of everyone and I'm going to be able to speak." And then when I mock with them, I find that they ramble. I find that they have no structure when it comes to answering, and their answers are 15 minutes instead of 2 minutes because they don't have a system and a structured approach. So anyway, with this GPT, my client did some of the foundational work before we got on a call. As you can see, He took the time, he put in the job posting, he got an understanding of the different components he needs to address, and then the GPT walked him through writing his stories. Now, a lot of resume writers and career coaches, they don't go through this story-driven approach to building your brand. And one of the brand assets or deliverables is your resume, right? So when you go through building your brand through a story-driven approach, there are a lot of positive things that come out of it. One, it really helps you go deep into remembering your experience and being specific. You start remembering moments on initiatives. Who are you talking to? What kind of results you've created? And this story architect probes you and probes you for this information. So let me demo this. So here I'm saying, yes, you captured the role accurately. So now what it's going to do is it's going to ask me to basically list a role from the last 10 years. So I'm going to go with slalom, senior product manager. I'm totally making this up, by the way. And I'm going to say January 1st, 2017 to January 1st, 2018. So you see how methodical it is? It goes step by step. And it's saying to me, great. Let's start with that role at Slalom. What was the main product or client engagement or transformation initiative you worked on? Notice how it keeps me focused on a product because this is a product role. And really, what I should be talking about is a specific product that I worked on versus just giving this overview of all of the things that I worked on. So I'm going to go with a specific product. I'm going to call it a Salesforce solution for Cheetah Digital. Got it. Salesforce solution for Cheetah Digital. Before we choose stories, I need to understand the scope so we can position this at the right level. And again, one of the mistakes that a lot of leaders make, director level and above, is they just talk about what they did, but they don't talk about how many teams were involved. They don't talk about how many functions were involved. What was the budget? Was it $1 million product? Was it a $2 million product? Because recruiters are going to assess your level based on that. And this is why my client succeeded, because the recruiter didn't need to see what his title was. They saw that he was managing, he was bringing in he grew the revenue by 600 million. So that signaled seniority. And so when you're there coming with this stuff, on your own, it's very difficult when you're not given a system. A lot of you already know this, but it's because you are not being given the accountability and the step-by-step system. When you're already overwhelmed, you end up forgetting certain things. Okay? So the GPT that I designed gives people the system. Now, I could give the GPT to people. I could sell it independently. But what I've noticed is that my clients still need my help. Because guess what? Even with the GPT, you still need someone to probe you. You still need someone to challenge you. You still need someone to ask you questions. And so once he went through the GPT and created all of his stories, I sat with him on a call, asked him a lot of questions, and it surfaced even more things that he forgot about. And then once we did that, we built the resume. Okay? No, I'm not Italian. And guess what, guys? He only applied to 9 jobs, got an interview, and then an offer. I hear people who tell me they apply to hundreds of jobs and they still don't even get an interview. Can you imagine 9 applications only at the director level and he gets an offer? That's incredible, isn't it? Now, the thing I wanted to say about this client is he was such a great student. He listened to everything I shared with him because when you go into a coaching program, when you work with an expert, when you go to a doctor, the behavior based on my experience that I've seen that helps people become successful is when they come with an open mind, when they're not resistant, when they're willing to try things, and when they're not afraid to put themselves out there. Now, I'm not saying that, God forbid, I'm always going to be right and 100% right. There is sometimes a level of testing and tweaking and experimentation. But at the same time, when I have a client who's resistant to every single thing and they don't want to, follow the process, that's like going to a doctor and saying, I'm not willing to try any medication that you recommend, right? That becomes difficult. Now, obviously, when you go to a doctor, you want to minimize the amount of experimentation because if you're just going to experiment and throw things at the wall, you might as well do it yourself. But what working with an expert does is it narrows down the amount of trial and error that you would be doing. Okay. And how do I know what needs to be done? Well, that's because I have been able to test it over 1,000 people. I've also learned this as someone who is a certified career coach, as someone who was trained by a VP of HR. So that's how I know. Okay. Um, that's the behavior that made him successful. And I'll tell you guys a little story. So this client got the offer and he still showed up to my in-person workshop yesterday. So I held an in-person workshop with 15 clients and yeah, he still showed up because he still felt like he had something to learn. And that's the mindset that makes people successful is when you are willing to learn, when you don't feel like a failure for asking for help, you actually see that as an accelerator. The thing is, when you're an executive, to me, it's even more reason to delegate things that are outside of your expertise, right? Again, just because you are good at what you do, it's a different skill set than finding a job, marketing yourself, branding yourself. Okay, so things moved very fast for this client. He had a recruiter call. I think it was like on a Thursday or a Wednesday. And then he had the call with the VP, the person that he would report into the Monday after. And then he had a third call with the SVP. Now, one of the things that I work on with my clients is teach them a storytelling framework in order for them to convert those interviews into offers. The other value that he had working with me is that he was able to practice. And again, watching YouTube videos to learn to be a better interviewer, listening to inspirational talks, using Claude to give you feedback on your interview answers is not the same as being able to practice and be able to learn how to improvise your answers. And this is a skill set that I teach my clients, and it's something they carry with them, not just in interviews, but actually presentations in the workplace, networking conversations. The art of storytelling is something that not everyone is good at. And yesterday, he actually made me very proud because one of the activities that I had for my clients was to basically come up with a story. And he shared an incredible story in front of everyone. It was so impressive. Okay, the last piece of the breakdown that I wanted to share with you all. So I'm going to summarize here and recap. Number one, we got clear on his ideal role. He was torn between two pathways: customer success work, product, partnerships, and we validated that direction and stuck with it. Beyond just figuring out the right role, we figured out his value proposition, what he does better than anyone else. Because again, even if we niche down to a particular role, you still need to differentiate yourself amongst the hundreds and thousands of other product leaders or other customer success leaders or whatever profession you're in. By the way, I help people across like countless of professions: tech, outside of tech, academia, hospitality, so many professions, and all over the world. But anyway, so we figured out his career direction. He's focused, he's excited, he has a target that he can aim for. Then we rebranded him against his new avatar, because when you are pivoting, whether you're moving up or you're moving out of an industry, you are assuming a new identity. So the way you talk about yourself needs to be different. It needs to be against this new identity. And that's what I mean by brand, because you want the hiring manager to perceive you as someone who's been doing this, not someone starting over or new to this, because no one's going to hire someone who's starting over. No one's going to hire someone who's going to learn on the job, right? And most of you don't need to learn on the job necessarily. You just haven't been given the title. You've been doing some of this stuff all along. You've just never been given the title. Okay, so we talked about identifying his ideal role, rebranding him. The third thing is converting your interviews into offers. Again, people come to me and say, as long as you put me in front of the hiring manager, I'm going to be able to influence them. But when we start practicing, I'm just like, okay, we need to tighten this. This needs to be concise. Your stories are long-winded. They're full of jargon. And this is why you're not getting traction. And by the way, I don't count a recruiter interview as an interview. That's screening. So if you're saying to me, well, I'm getting interviews and I'm passing the recruiter interview, so I have no problems with interviews. Well, first of all, if you're not getting an offer, if you're getting interviews and you're not getting an offer, then yeah, the interview is a problem. Don't say to me that, oh, the interview is not a problem. Just put me in front of someone. Unless you're telling me that you're getting offers, then the interview is a problem. Because if the interview wasn't a problem, you would be getting an offer. So let's just make that clear. Okay, apart from those three pillars, the identifying your ideal role, rebranding you so that you can generate demand, you can generate opportunities, and converting those interviews into offers, becoming a great storyteller, having that executive presence, being able to influence through your stories. There is a very important component that people forget about, and that is having a community. This client was in my community of other executives who, by the way, are very, very supportive. And I do believe that when you are surrounded by like minded people with similar goals, it accelerates your success. It's almost like being part of a sports team, right? If any of you have any of you played a sports, like a game, um, you were part of a team? I mean, tell me, like, isn't that part of why you actually wanted to show up? Isn't that part of why you kept going? Yeah. So it's the same thing. And when you see other leaders getting traction, that actually gives you hope that the process works. There's also the aspect of masterminding, because sometimes my clients end up being successful in a specific thing, and they teach each other what works. So with this client, actually, he was really good at, getting the interview, and he shared his approach of how he actually sent a message to the recruiter and how he had these conversations. Another person was, getting traction by applying to roles, and she shared her, method and process. So that's the beautiful thing about this, is that people learn from each other. And emotionally, it's helpful when you're having a hard time, um, and you realize there's nothing wrong with you, right? Because other people are also having a hard time. That also gives you the momentum and motivation. Sometimes, when you're around your friends or your spouse, they may not get it because they're not going through what you're going through. And when you are around people who are going through exactly what you're going through, that just creates a lot of empathy, and you just feel a lot more heard. So that's the full system of how my client landed a director role. I do believe that this client had amazing personality traits that made him successful. Like I said, he was very receptive to coaching. I think a lot of it is because he also is an educator. So there is that. And he was very dedicated. Like he was he was putting in the work, he was applying to the roles, he wasn't delaying, and that's honestly what made him successful. So, if you want similar results, if you believe in yourself, look, I know I can help you. If you are the type of person who believes that you're great at what you do, you're talented, you want to make an impact, and you're not willing to settle. If you have those qualities, then I can absolutely help you. And all you need to do is book a career diagnosis. But if you're the kind of person who wants to blame the market, who doesn't want to take ownership and accountability, listen, the market is not going to change. You don't need to wait until it gets better. It's not going to get better. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. And so, what is your choice? You can either give up, you can keep complaining, or you can do something about it. So, if you want to do something about it, my door is open. But if you just want to vent and complain, then please don't book a call with me, because I don't have time for that. I want to use my time to people who actually want to get results and are serious about making a change for themselves. So, how do you book the call? It's very simple. If you go into my LinkedIn profile, I'm going to share my screen here. I'll just do a quick screen share. Let us see. There we go. Okay. So if you go into my profile, you are going to see a button right under my heading that says book an appointment. This is where you book your appointment. You click on this book your career diagnosis button, and then you can go through this intake form. It only takes 2 minutes just for me to understand your situation. Okay, who is this call for? I work with professionals who make six figures. So, at a minimum, if you're currently making six figures and you're aiming for 150,000, 200,000, $350,000 roles, then we will likely be a fit. If you are making below 100,000, then we are not a fit, most likely. Um, because I work with professionals who are senior leaders. Now, if you're going through a tough spot and, life had its way with you and it was a setback, you're going through a setback, but at some point in your career you made those six figures, then no worries. We can still talk. And if you're not sure whether you should book the call with me or not, then just send me a DM and we can quickly have a conversation through the DMs. I will likely ask you questions, and then based on your situation, I can recommend the call or not. Okay. Now, these are not coaching calls. Okay. In these calls, they are 15 minutes. And basically, I diagnose in those 15 minutes what is blocking you from achieving your goals. And based on that, I will let you know what steps will help you solve it. The solving part happens as part of my coaching program, not part of the career diagnosis. Okay. All right. So I hope that this has been of value. Let me know in the chat if this was helpful. I would love to know. And, like this video for me to get feedback, because I don't know who watches my videos. And it's always nice to know that someone watched this and got value. All right, friends, I hope that you learned a lot from this client situation. It is really possible to turn around your situation. It doesn't matter what the market condition is. In this market, there are still people who are successful. There are still people who make money. But you need to have a specific mindset to make that happen, and you need to follow the right approach. So if you are the kind of person who is willing to improve themselves, then I encourage you to book the call with me and we can talk about how to make that happen. All right. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.